You were meant to hear this. Have you ever felt like something happened at exactly the right time, but you couldn't explain why? You were thinking of someone and they called. You were lost, unsure what to do next, and a stranger said something that struck right into your heart. Or maybe a book fell off the shelf, and inside it was the sentence you needed to keep going. Coincidences? Maybe. But what if they weren't random? What if there's a hidden rhythm to the universe? Not loud, not obvious, but like a soft drumbeat behind your life calling you to listen, to pause, to pay attention. They call it synchronicity. Not luck, not superstition, but meaning woven into the threads of chance. Carl Jung once said, "Synchronicity is the coming together of inner and outer events in a way that cannot be explained by cause and effect, and that is meaningful to the observer." But long before Jung gave it a name, the ancients already knew. Zen monks called it mind meeting the moment. The Buddha spoke of paticca samuppada, interdependent origination, how nothing exists on its own, how everything arises with everything else. And maybe you felt this too, a moment that made no sense, but felt like it was placed there just for you, not as an answer, but as a mirror. I remember this woman. Her name was Hannah, mid-30s, divorced, drained. She had moved to cities chasing a job she wasn't even sure she wanted. Every morning, she woke up with this quiet ache in her chest, like something inside her had packed its bags and left, but left no note behind. She told me I wasn't depressed. I wasn't even sad, but I couldn't feel my own life anymore. And then one day, she took a walk, not because she wanted to, because her Wi-Fi was down and she needed air. She wandered into a small alleyway she had never noticed before. There was a bookstore at the end, dusty old, with faded signs no algorithm would ever recommend. And on a little table outside, she saw a book with a title that stopped her breath. The Things You Find When You're Not Looking. She bought it, not for the words, but because somehow it felt like a message. And inside, on page 143, was a line she still carries in her wallet. Sometimes, the thing you're searching for is waiting quietly for you to stop searching. She cried that night, not because of the book, but because for the first time in years, she felt like life had spoken to her. Was it coincidence? Or was it connection? Not connection in the digital sense, but the kind your soul remembers when the outer world and your inner world finally meet. It's funny. We trust satellites to tell us where to turn on a map. We trust algorithms to predict our taste in music. We trust forecasts for the weather next Thursday. But we don't trust the quiet pull in our chest. The one that tells us go left here, not right. Text this person. Read that. Pause. Walk. Breathe. Even when we don't know why. But life isn't just a sequence of data. It's a dance. And every so often, the music shifts. You hear a phrase in a conversation beside you that answers a question you hadn't voiced. You stumble into an old journal you wrote at 19, and suddenly, the 19-year-old you comforts the you of today. You miss a bus and meet someone on the next one that changes your direction entirely. We call it chance, but it feels deliberate because it whispers, not shouts. And the more we slow down, the more we notice them. These small glimmering threads woven between days. Buddhism teaches when the mind is still, the truth speaks. Not in thunder, not in prophecy, but in tiny, elegant echoes. Life brushing past you with a feather, not a hammer. And synchronicity is like that feather. It doesn't demand you believe. It only invites you to notice, to see that maybe your life is not random. Maybe the timing of things, especially the ones that break you open, are not mistakes. Maybe there is a silent intelligence not outside of you, but within you. That already knows when you need to stop, knows when you need to meet someone, knows when it's time to begin again. But to hear it, you have to be still enough to feel the ripple before the wave, still enough to catch the thread before it floats by. So the next time you think of someone and they call, or you stumble on a quote that feels like a lifeline, or a delay leads you to exactly what you didn't know you needed, pause. Don't dismiss it. Ask yourself, what if this isn't a distraction? What if this is the direction? Life speaks, but only when we're willing to listen with more than our ears. And sometimes, a whisper is all it takes to change everything. The pattern behind the coincidence. You're walking through your day like usual, the same street, the same sky, the same noise in your head. Then suddenly, something happens. It's subtle, almost forgettable. A stranger says a sentence that feels like it was meant for you. You read a line in a book that echoes something you dreamed last week. A song plays in a cafe, and the lyrics answer a question you didn't even know you were asking. You freeze, just for a moment, as if the whole world paused and looked at you. A coincidence, maybe, but deep down, beneath all the logic, all the doubt, you feel something stirring. Like a part of you knew it was going to happen. Like this moment has already been waiting. A man once told me a story. He was a corporate executive, grounded in logic, numbers, efficiency. He didn't believe in fate or signs or anything that couldn't be measured. But years ago, on the night of his father's funeral, he walked out of the service numb. No tears, no words, just static in his chest. He sat on a bench, late evening, and across the street, a street musician began to play. It wasn't just any song, it was his father's favorite song. A rare old tune almost no one played anymore. It felt like the melody wrapped itself around him, held him in the places no one could see. He told me that moment cracked something open in me. For the first time in my life, I felt my father wasn't gone. Not really. Something was still here, listening, speaking. He never became religious, never left his job, but he began to live differently, more present, more curious, more open to the unknown. You see, synchronicity doesn't demand belief. It doesn't follow rules. It follows resonance. It's like a tuning fork. Your inner state meets the outer world, and the two hum together. Not because they were forced to, but because they were always connected like waves rising from the same ocean. In Buddhist thought, there's no random. Everything is a thread, cause and effect flowing endlessly in all directions. But not everything is linear. Sometimes, what we call meaningful coincidence is simply a meeting point. A moment where two threads cross at just the right place to awaken you. Not to teach, not to fix, but to wake you up. To remind you, you are not separate. You are not floating alone in chaos. There is an unseen current beneath your life, and sometimes it reveals itself for just a breath. Do you remember the first time you felt like something was more than chance? Maybe it was a conversation with someone you barely knew, but they said exactly what your heart was too scared to admit. Maybe it was a job you didn't get, only to find something better days later, as if life had saved you from your own limited vision. Or maybe it was pain, a loss, a fall, a season where everything was stripped from you. But later, much later, you see how that pain brought you to a person, a book, a moment that reshaped everything. Sometimes life breaks you open, just wide enough for something sacred to get in. In Zen, they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But the teacher doesn't always wear robes. Sometimes the teacher is silence. Sometimes it's heartbreak. Sometimes it's a stranger who says one sentence and vanishes. And sometimes, yes, it's a coincidence so strange, you have no choice but to pause and wonder. But here's the secret. The teacher was never out there. It was the part of you that finally became ready. Ready to notice. Ready to see what's been whispering all along. So what do we do with synchronicity? How do we live with it? Not just admire it. We start by listening. Not just with ears, but with attention. We slow down. We stop brushing off these moments like dust. We let them in, and then we respond. We follow the pull. We write the person we were thinking about. We read the book that caught our eye. We say yes to the invitation that feels irrational but right. We walk through the door that opens, even if we don't know what's on the other side, because the more you say yes to these quiet calls, the louder life starts to speak. Synchronicity is not about magic. It's about alignment. When your soul starts walking the same direction as your life, you begin to see things others miss. It's not that the signs weren't always there. It's just that now you're finally looking. And maybe that's what this moment is for. This video, these words. Maybe you didn't stumble on this by accident. Maybe something in you was already listening. And this is just a confirmation. Not that everything will make sense, but that some things don't need to. They only need to be felt, trusted, followed, lived. When the soul knows before the mind understands, there are moments in life that don't wait for logic. You feel something before you can explain it. Before your mind catches up, you meet someone, and within minutes, it feels like you've known them before. You visit a place you've never been, but everything feels strangely familiar. You make a choice that seems irrational, but deep down, you know it's right. And when people ask you why, you can only smile and say, I don't know. It just felt true. Synchronicity is not always a bolt of lightning. Sometimes it's a whisper in your bones, a knowing without a map, a pull without a reason. In modern life, we're trained to doubt anything we can't measure. If it doesn't show up in data, it doesn't exist. If it can't be proven, it isn't real. But not everything meaningful fits into a spreadsheet. Try to analyze a sunset and you miss its beauty. Try to dissect a song that moves your soul and the magic slips away. Synchronicity belongs to the same realm. It's the poetry beneath the math, the silent agreement between your inner world and the world outside. And sometimes it appears just when you're about to give up. There's a story I heard about a man named Elijah. He was in his late 20s, burnt out from chasing promotions, validation speed. He'd been in therapy, tried journaling, tried changing cities, but something still felt stuck, like he was running a race with no finish line. One night, unable to sleep, he went for a drive. No GPS, no destination, just motion. And in the quiet fog of early morning, he stopped for gas. As he walked into the station, a small sign on the door caught his eye, a faded piece of paper taped to the glass. It read, "If you're looking for a sign, this is it." He laughed. Then he froze. Not because the message was clever, but because only hours before he had written in his journal, "I just wish life would give me a sign." And now, here it was. Cheap ink, crooked tape, a gas station at 3 a.m. But to him, it was holy. Not because the sign had answers, but because it reminded him to ask different questions. What if I stop trying to figure it all out and just start listening? What if I don't need a plan? Just presence. That night changed nothing on the outside, but everything on the inside. You see, synchronicity doesn't guarantee outcomes. It's not a shortcut to success. It's not a sign that everything will go perfectly. It's a shift in how you relate to life, from chasing to receiving, from planning to paying attention, from control to connection. In the Buddhist tradition, there's a word sati, often translated as mindfulness. But its deeper meaning is to remember. To remember what? To remember yourself. To remember the part of you that is already whole, already wise, already tuned to the rhythm of life. Synchronicity is not the universe throwing breadcrumbs for you to follow. It's you, remembering that you are already part of the whole. And when you live from that remembering, you start to notice the golden threads. A chance encounter becomes a doorway. A sentence overheard becomes a compass. A missed opportunity becomes redirection, not rejection, because your soul has always known the way. But here's the truth. Most people miss it, not because it isn't happening, but because they're too busy filling the silence, too busy numbing the ache, too busy proving their worth. But you're here, you're listening, and that means something has already opened inside you. You're not looking for a sign anymore. You're beginning to recognize them, to feel the difference between a life of noise and a life of meaning, to choose depth over speed, truth over image, wholeness over perfection. So the next time something strange happens and your chest tightens or your breath catches, don't rush past it. Let it sink in. Sit with it, even if you don't understand it, because that's where synchronicity lives, in the spaces between certainty and surrender, where the soul whispers, "This moment matters," even if you won't know why until much, much later. Even if you won't know why until much, much later. There's an old Zen saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." At first, it sounds like a riddle. Nothing changes, yet everything changes. But maybe that's the secret. The external world remains the same, but your awareness of it deepens. And that awareness, that stillness inside you, is where synchronicity begins to bloom. Because life doesn't speak louder when you awaken. You just begin to hear what's always been speaking. Have you ever noticed the way a leaf falls? Not rushed, not desperate, just perfectly surrendered. Its timing is precise. Its dance through the air, graceful, unafraid. And somehow, when you're quiet enough, even that falling leaf feels like it was meant for you. That's not sentimentality, that's presence. And in presence, even the smallest detail can become divine. Let me tell you about Min. He was a quiet man, midlife, lived alone in a small apartment above a tea shop in Hoi An, Vietnam. No social media, no smart devices, just a flip phone and a bicycle. He wasn't famous, didn't write books, didn't teach meditation, but people came to sit with him. Why? Because Min noticed things no one else did. He once told a visitor, "The birds have moods, you know. They sing differently before the rain." He said it like a scientist, but with the heart of a poet. One day, a tourist asked him, How do you know what to do each day without a planner? Min smiled, then whispered, I listened to the sky. At first, it sounded like metaphor, but the more time you spent with him, the more you realized it wasn't. He wasn't predicting the weather. He was responding to it. His whole life was a dialogue with the present moment. The clouds, the sounds, the sense of the wind. He told me, people wait for big signs, lightning, thunder, but the real signs come as wind on your skin, a child laughing in the distance, a sudden memory that enters like incense. He lived as if everything was communicating with him, not in a mystical way, but in a profoundly attuned way. Synchronicity thrives in that kind of attunement, not when you try to force meaning onto life, but when you trust that life already carries meaning, and your role is simply to notice it. There's a line from the Tao Te Ching: the sage does not seek. By not seeking, he finds. It's not about passivity, it's about receptivity, to stop clutching at certainty, to stop demanding answers, and instead to open, to soften, to listen. Because when you listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being, the world becomes more than scenery. It becomes a conversation. We live in a time when silence is rare. Every pause is filled. Every moment is distracted. We've mistaken connection for constant access. But true connection is spacious. It has room to breathe. Synchronicity can't reach you when you're scrolling endlessly. It needs the quiet between the thoughts, the space between your plans. Have you noticed? Some of the most powerful realizations come in the shower, on a walk, while washing dishes. Moments when the mind isn't trying. Moments when the guard is down. That's when the whisper comes. The idea, the insight, the image. The person you suddenly remember you need to call. Not random, not planned, just right. This is the rhythm of a meaningful life. Not one ruled by control, but by participation. You begin to partner with the moment. You stop needing to dominate your path. You begin to dance with it, and that dance, gentle, fluid, alive, becomes the most honest thing about you. So maybe this is what synchronicity is trying to teach us. Not just that the universe is magical, but that the mundane is already miraculous. That the signs aren't hiding. We just stopped looking. That the silence we fear is full of answers. And that life isn't waiting to give us meaning. Life is meaning. And our noticing of it is the remembering of our part in it. So tonight, before you fall asleep, don't pick up your phone. Don't fill the air with more noise. Just lie there. Listen to your breath. Feel the quiet. And ask yourself, what has life been trying to tell me that I've been too busy to hear? The answer may not come in words, but it will come softly, perfectly timed, just like a falling leaf that lands on your path for a reason only your heart will understand. The moment you begin to trust. Have you ever felt like something invisible is guiding you? Not in a grand mystical way, but in the quiet rhythm of your ordinary life. A detour that led to someone who changed everything. A heartbreak that became your turning point. A mistake that opened the door you were too afraid to knock on. It's strange, isn't it? How the worst things can become the most meaningful. How what breaks us can also begin us. You see, synchronicity isn't here to save you from pain. It's here to show you that the pain has purpose, that the chaos has shape, that your story is not a random string of events, but a path you're already walking. even when you feel lost. It's not about finding clarity. It's about walking with presence. Because when you're truly present, the world begins to speak. Not louder, just more clearly. There's an old parable about a monk and a traveler. The traveler came to the monastery exhausted and heartbroken. He had lost everything: his job, his marriage, his will to continue. He asked the monk, "Why is life so cruel? Why does everything fall apart? I tried to do the right things. I tried to plan. I tried to be good. And still, I ended up with nothing." The monk listened, then walked him to a garden filled with stones. Some were smooth, some cracked, some broken. He picked up a jagged stone, turned it over in his hand, and said, "This stone was once perfect, but now it lets water in. It's not broken, it's receptive." Then he looked at the traveler and whispered, "Maybe your cracks aren't the end. Maybe they're the beginning of your listening." And maybe that's what synchronicity really is. Not magic, not superstition, but listening. Listening to the space between plans, the moments that don't make sense yet, the mistakes that turn out to be messages. Because when you stop expecting life to go your way, you begin to see the way life goes. And that way is wiser than you think. In Theravada Buddhism, there's a teaching: what comes to you is meant for your awakening. It doesn't mean everything is good. It means everything can be used for good, for growth, for returning to yourself. Synchronicity is not a sign of privilege. It's a sign of presence. It meets the one who is ready to receive, not because they're special, but because they've stopped resisting. Because they finally said, "I don't need to understand everything. I just need to be open." So now I'll ask you, have you noticed how many things had to happen for you to arrive at this very moment? The people who hurt you, the ones who helped you, the delays, the rejections, the last-minute changes, the words you read at just the right time. Not one of them was wasted. Not one of them was a mistake. And the fact that you're here, still breathing, still searching, still listening, it means life hasn't given up on you. So maybe you don't need to give up on life either. What would happen if you trusted the timing of your path, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours? What would happen if you stopped asking for signs and started treating every moment as one, even this one? Even this breath? What would happen if you believed that the thing pulling you gently forward isn't fantasy, but your soul calling you home? There's a soft kind of courage in surrendering to something larger than your plans. It doesn't mean you sit still. It means you move with listening. It means you walk through the fog, not needing the whole map, just the next step. It means you begin to trust that the people who leave make space for the ones who stay. That the silence between answers is not a void, but a gestation. That the detours are actually the sacred path in disguise. And that life is not against you. Life is always calling you back. Back to presence. Back to yourself. Back to trust. So this is your sign. Not because I said so, but because you already feel it. Because something in your chest softened just now. Something inside you sighed. Like an old truth returning. You were never lost. You were only being redirected. You were never broken. You were only being opened, and you were never forgotten. You've been guided all along. So walk slowly now. Not because you're unsure, but because you're finally listening. And when the next strange coincidence appears, the next beautiful detour, the next inexplicable pull, don't doubt it. Smile, breathe, and say softly to yourself, "I'm ready. because you are.